Okay. So this is right away at the beginning of Mesechus Megillah. You must have learned this already, Rabbi Pini. Aleph. Isa Mesechus Megillah. Shalu Talmidav Rashbi Mipnei Man Neschayvu Seineim Shal Yisrael Shal Ba'Yisrael Adar Kloya. The Gemara speaks euphemistically. The Gemara doesn't want to say why were the Yidden liable for destruction. So it says Seineim Shal Yisrael, the enemies of the Yidden, but it means the Yidden Chas v'Shalom. Remember, this is the operative word. This is what the Sichos is going to be about. In Cain, the Gemara asks, because the ones in Shushan attended the party. What about the 127 countries outside of Shushan? Before Achashverosh, Nebuchadnezzar ruled, he made a decree that you didn't have to bow down to Avodah Zarah. They made a big statue of him. He was Avodah Zarah. They bowed down. Because of that, they were liable for death penalty. Fine. But the main part that the Rebbe is going to talk about, the first answer. Simply put, they were eating non-kosher. Meaning besakana, there was a doubt about their existence. Tafshil hagoyim means not kosher food, not kosher food. And non-kosher food is a bad thing. But it's a lav. There's malchus under certain circumstances. There's a korban chatas under certain circumstances. But it's not a capital offense. It's not avodah zarah. It's not gilui arayis. It's not shfichas damim. It's not one of the things. It's not even chilul Shabbos that a person would be mechuyev the death penalty for. When the Gemara challenged it, in other words, if the Gemara wouldn't challenge it, so maybe it relies that there is somewhere a question about this. But the Gemara does challenge this answer, but the challenge is not at all from this perspective. Why the entire world should be killed? In other words, the problem that they're being killed because they ate from the meal, that doesn't bother the Gemara. The Gemara is only bothered, what about everybody else? That they're supposed to be destroyed. That's one question that I've asked. If you remember, we quoted the Medrash. The Medrash says, Al sha'achlu mitafshel goyim. Nehenu means pleasure, delight, enjoyment. The mashma shachet eina hachila elahana misudas Achashverosh. Rather the pleasure that they had from it. Then the Rebbe says another problem with saying that was not kosher food. And the Chazal go as follows. What's it mean, kirtzoin ish v'ish? It's an unusual type of expression. So the Chazal say, we find that Mordechai is called an ish. Ish Mordechai, Ish Yehudi, and it says also about the Ish Haman Gadol. It says about Haman is called an Ish. So when it says Kirtzoin Ish ve'ish, it means that the meal was made both for people of Mordechai's stature and people like Mordechai that wanted to eat only the best hechsher, and people like Haman that whatever. What's it mean? They didn't force the people as far as drink is concerned. They didn't have to have treifa wine. So if there was kosher foods, so what was the problem? Maybe you'll tell me, even though there was kosher food, they still chose the not kosher food. Despite the fact that there was kosher food, so the Gemara should have said that specifically. Should have just said nanu misadas. It said they chose to eat the non-kosher food even though there was kosher. Base. So the Rebbe brings a different explanation from other mefarshim. It wasn't about kosher. Rather, it's also over there in the previous page in Mesechus Megillah. It says over there that it wasn't just the Yidden knew what Yirmiyahu HaNavi said, that there would be the Beis HaMikdash would be rebuilt after 70 years. This was known to the nations around. So Achashverosh knew that there was the Nevuah that says in Yirmiyahu HaNavi that after 70 years of exile, the Beis HaMikdash would be rebuilt. But he made a mistake about the cheshbon. It was rebuilt after 70 years, but when you calculated it from was a mistake. But he thought the reason he made the party 3 years into his B'shnas Shalosh L'Malchi. Why did he make a party all of a sudden on the third year? Because now he saw he would truly be in control of the world. He was a Moshel B'Kippah. He was a superpower. He didn't want anybody to come back to control. He was awaiting for the 70 years to be fulfilled. In the third year of his kingship, he saw that the 70 years were up. The Yidden were not returned to Eretz Yisrael. Now he could take out the kalim of the Beis HaMikdash and he spread them out and used them by his meal. Still in all nigalu. Omar, he said to himself in that third year, Hashta vaday sulay mifriki, they won't be redeemed. Therefore, that meal that celebrated and marked the Beis HaMikdash not being rebuilt, im kain, kol mishanana ma'oisa suda, who yoyda, he's indicating, shusameach al Purim HaMikdash. That was the Aveda. That was the problem. It wasn't about eating not kosher. It was about the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. They were happy, kaviyachol, that the Beis HaMikdash was gone for good.
Esther using the kelim itself.
Huh?
Touching the kelim, using the kelim itself.
Of course. But who knows if they didn't actually touch the kelim or not. But the main thing is to be mishtatef in a meal that marks the fact that the Beis HaMikdash is not being rebuilt.
How does it go together with what the Gemara said? The Gemara said that the reason why they got klayait because in Numis.
All it says is Nehen Numis Udas Shloisei
But
Rasha.
it's not how it's connected with this.
Because they had hana from a meal that was marking the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. But the Rebbe says even this is not strong enough of an answer. The expression is specifically, the Gemara uses kloya. Kloya means complete and total destruction of men, women, and children. Even young children. Esther, according to that opinion, that was because of Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah is something unique. Avodah Zarah is something that even children and even the people that didn't serve can be pulled into it. The Avodah Zarah, Shayach Shaper Kloya, K'moy Be'egel, the Chsiv, V'achal Lo'isam Karega. The Ein Yankiv brings down this lashon, this pasuk, that you see that when it comes to Avodah Zarah, when it came to the Egel, the Eibishter said, I'm going to destroy them all. There were children that weren't guilty, they're not Mechiyuva, but Avodah Zarah is such a type of severe sin that it grabs everybody. So if you're saying the reason of Ishtachvul Etzelem, the second reason, the Gemara, fine. But in the first reason of the Gemara, it doesn't make any sense. How can children be held liable because their parents decided to go to a meal that celebrated the destruction of Beis HaMikdash? Derech Agav, he also brings down that in the footnote, Ir HaNidachas, Ta'af and Noshim are also killed by an Ir HaNidachas. Aval Echav Shalom Meshavur Zeshenenu Cholu Veheru Shem Smeich Mal Churban Beis HaMikdash Tia Gzeres Kloya Gam Al Eila Ta'af Shloi Chotu B'zeh. So now the Rebbe goes with his own unique approach over here. It wasn't about eating. It wasn't about the idea of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, but the emphasis was Nehenu Misudas Shloisei Rasha. They enjoyed the fact that they were invited. They enjoyed the fact that they are now being able to participate like any other person in Bavel or Persia, etc. So how does it survive in such a situation? hu lef'amim ba'ofen shekiyumam hu nisi l'mayla min hateva. It's many times, or sometimes he says, it's totally miraculous, just like one lamb among 70 wolves. But how does it survive? It's not a natural reason. So the Rebbe says, when does that take place? We have to show that we know and realize that it's Hashem that's the one that's protecting us. Amnam b'med var mamurim shebnei Yisrael nishmarim b'ashgacha miyuchedes ve'in hashivim zeivim yicholim l'ngoya behem kasher hanagosam hi behesem lezem shesoyimchim al kadosh baruch hu sheyatzilem v'yishmnei aval kishem menagdim l'shmirazu. They're like showing, I'm not interested. They consider the UN, the White House, there's going to be people to protect us. We're going to be saved by somebody. And then he's going to explain now from the Rambam, if a Yid Chas v'Sholem insists on showing, I don't need Eibish's help, I'm fine. We've got a friend in the White House, we've got the protection of the UN, we have all different types of pull and the protection and things like that. So then the Eibish is going to say, fine, I'll let the natural world take its course. I'll let the natural way how there's 70 wolves act when it comes to a Yid.
Look at the past 14 months.
Al derech bir Rambam Mashakosov v'starti ponem mehem. So the Rambam comments that there's a very interesting expression in the pasuk in Parsh Vayelach. It says the Eibishter will hide his face from the Yidden, and what's going to happen when the Eibishter hides his face from the Yidden? Umitzauhu ra'os rabos al ki eina lekai bekirbi mitzauni harois ha'ela b'derech mitzia. The negative things are like finding me now. It's not that Abraham says, I'm going to send negative things after you. These things happen to find me because I took myself out from under Hashem's umbrella, from under Hashem's protection. So then, in return, Hashem nivdol memenu, v'u'oz mezumen l'chol rasha efshar sheyimtzeuhum. Haynu shemesalik memenu hashgachosai hamyuchedes lihimolet miyad hamikra. Miyad hamikra means something that happens by chance. He took himself out of that protection that would save him from some chance event. Ubemela, when he takes him out from that protection, Nishar Mufkir L'chol Mikra, he's open and ready and available for any type of event to take place. That over there the Rambam speaks about how one needs to take into consideration that a fast day is meant for us to reflect on the reason why the fast day came about. And it's meant for us that whenever a tzara comes, we need to cry out to the Eibishter. And not to chas v'sholom say, tzaras happen. Stuff goes wrong. The Rambam says that's the worst thing a Yid can do. If a Yid suffers, or Klal Yisrael is suffering, and let's say, well, it's the natural thing of things. There's recessions, there are depressions, there are pandemics, things happen. So the Rambam says this is the worst thing a person could do. It says in the pasuk that when you go with me, literally it means like coldness, ambivalence, kar. I will go even more with like coldness towards you. I will punish you even further. So the Rambam says, when what's the reason that the Eibusha brings a tzara? Because he wants Yidden to do tshuva. Instead of them doing tshuva, what are they doing? Im time rushi kari. They say, it happened. Davar zema minaga olam iralana b'tzara zu nikra nikris. Oisav lachem chamas oisa kari. Then I will add even more. She'ein retzayne loymar the Rambam raksha kadosh baruch hu moisav ba'oinish v'atzara. That's not the only thing that I'm trying to say. The Eibishter acts with him, you think things happen by chance? Fine, we'll let you run by chance. We'll remove you from my special protection. He becomes open to any event. So now we get back to what took place by Achashverosh. It wasn't in a way of they did A and Hashem punished them with B, but they took themselves out of the Hashem's hashgacha, and then automatically the world took over, and the world hates Yidden. So the world wanted to destroy Yidden. I remember, maybe there still is, but there was an approach at one time. You don't punish kids, but you give them consequences. They have to see the consequences of their action. The Rebbe is saying the same thing over here, that it wasn't a punishment, it was a consequence, a teitzah of what they did wrong. Before the Rebbe said that there are times when Yidden are like a kifsa achas ben shivim zevim. Once Haman got to become prime minister, that's when that situation came to the fore. Therefore, the way they felt, even though it was beforehand, before it happened with Haman, they felt in such a type of way, like we're in protection. Give a look. We're treated like all the rest of the citizens. We're invited to Achashverosh Suda. This is the God Laraya. It removed that protection. Achashverosh Chashuva Etzlam Ad Kedei Kach Shishtatfusam Besudasai Haishanachshavas Etzlam Lekaved Ad Shenenu Mazeh. Give a look. I was invited to the White House. If I was invited to the White House, nothing could happen to me. I'm under full protection. So he says, Vishtatfusam Besuda Loi Haisam Uchreches. They didn't have to do it. They didn't have to participate. They had to go. They had to honor the king, but they didn't have to participate and show that we're excited about it. They did it out of the fact that they enjoyed. Give a look, I got an invitation. I'm just like all the other people around. And the Rebbe is later on going to emphasize that he doesn't even call Achashverosh by name, just a Russia, the antithesis of the Eibishter, the opposite of the Eibishter, someone that goes against the Eibishter. Their Hana was that a Russia, someone that's not what the Eibishter is about, is taking care of them. Shall God la roya umachnisim ma'iridim atzmam tachas shilton ativi shal hazaevim hashoylu as kiyuma shal akifsa kanal. So then the Rebbe goes on and says that this is actually shows and expresses itself in our attitude and everything that we do. And when we go make a living, we have to understand where the money is coming from. Even though we need to work, but where's the bracha coming from? Yeser biur bagdam yadu mashamar chazal the ein soimchim al nes, and therefore I can't sit home and say the Eibush is going to cover my rent, my mortgage, my food, my kids' education, and everything. Va'toira amra beracha Hashem alokecha b'chol asher taseh. Yes, it's the Eibush's bracha, but you need to do something for it. The af shebirchas Hashem tashir. It's not my chachma, it's not my cleverness, and so on. Mikol makim ein bracha zu chol ala adam kasheru yoshev batel. You can't sit with your hands crossed over your chest and waiting for the money to come in. El mutelas olav hachayva lasis davar ma'avur parnasasai. That's why it says Hashem will bench you b'chol shetasem. Yet, even though I need to go to work, amna mi'idach olav leida ulahakir she'ein malachtai ella asiyas kli. Dahainu she'ishtadlusai v'asiyasai Einam hasiba va'agoyrem hamevi umazun loy mezoynoi ufanasasai. The work does not cause it. It's only a container, a kli, literally a container. It's something to put it into. Al shemrakeli liberchas shakadosh baruch hu sheboy mashpia like kadosh baruch hu mezoynoi ufanasasai. Kolay. HaKadosh Baruch Hu ratza shemezoynoi shal adam yislabesh v'yavoy bekli tivi bedarki ateva. V'ateva hu yizbarach kavei v'tavi ba'olam. V'lachein siva la'adam lasses kelim tivim l'parnasasi. That's what the Eibishter wanted. In other places it's explained why. The Eibishter didn't want that to take away a person's bechira chavshis. If a person sees that it's the Eibishter, let's say, that's the whole time giving him his parnasa, he's not doing anything for it, so then how would you be able to have bechira? So the Eibishter wanted that the world should run in a way of tzimtzum, that he is concealed.
What is taken from the Jew?
Huh?
If Hashem would give them
If it would be a ness, and the person says, let's say, I have a lot of betachon in the Eibishter, and the Eibishter is just going to throw down money from Min HaShamayim. So then there would be a big problem with Bechira. You would know that it's the Eibishter that's giving you the Parnasa. You would realize it's coming from the Eibishter. So therefore, you have to have what's called, you need to have the tzimtzum, you need to have the Eibishter conceal himself and cover himself. Part of that covering is that I need to show as if the natural world is what's giving me the Parnasa. But that's only something I need to show because Hashem wants me to have that covering. But aval guf mezoyne shel adam hu rak birchas Hashem kana. Umekiven shekein ein mokem lahachshiv ha'esek shel ha'atzmai mi'achar shekol ikroi einai ela kli shebay shoyre birchas Hashem. Ve'ikir ishtadlos ha'adam tzrich aliyas lahachshiv v'lasas atzmai roi l'birchas Hashem. It's not so much how good of a living I make, how tricky or how that I made all types of kunsten to be able to make a living. The main thing is, am I worthy for the Eibishter's Baruch? And then, once we decide and figure out if I'm worthy for Hashem's Baruch, so the next step is, okay, let's make a keli for it. And you see, two people can do the same job. One guy can end up being a multimillionaire. The other guy can be in the air. It's not about the work itself. And even deeper, that's not the only thing. Ella oidzais v'ikir shebnei Yisrael einam nesunim mikara tachas shilter v'anagas hateva. Yidden are out of this world. Yidden are like aliens. We don't belong here, and everything that happens to us is not a natural event, including the parnasa. V'kemavur b'kam mekaymis shebnei Yisrael mekablim chayusam shemavaya shalom ma'ila min hateva. V'hainu shehu yizbarach mashgiach u'manig es kol inyani Yisrael b'ashgacham yuchedes u'banhagen nisis she'eino mugbelas b'chuki ateva. There's a whole Sichos the Rebbe in Parshat B'Shalach where he goes into the idea of the man, that the man was lechem in Hashemayim, and the Yidden had to eat the man in the midbar, so that when they come into Eretz Yisrael and they are finally working the ground, they should realize that even though now the food that we're eating is lechem min haaretz, in truth, the lechem min hashemayim was supposed to show them that even when it's lechem min haaretz, we are really beyond the earth, and even this lechem min haaretz is really coming min hashemayim. That's what the Rebbe is adding over here. In footnote 41, he says a very interesting thing. He brings in the Tzemach Tzedek. He says that when a person is involved in business, he has to have in mind, Yechavan, it's very interesting. You think about kavanah when you do a mitzvah, when you're davening, you have to have kavanah. He says the Lashon Yechavan, that he believes that the hashpah is the Eibishter's bracha, just like the Nisim Geluyim, like the Eibishter brought down the man. And the Rebbe Marash says that Parnasa these days is just as miraculous as the hashpah Samon. Anyway, so he says, according to this, Lefi zeh mashal kabbalas birchas Hashem, zu, such a type of bracha. Tzarich liyas ma'isa adam asher ta'aseh. Why take it? If it's all miraculous anyway, rak mishum sherotza kadosh baruch hu she'anhaga nisis hazu tavra di'ateva. The Eibishter wanted that it should be a nest that's malubish b'teva. Just like the nest of Purim he's going to talk about soon is a nest malubish b'teva. V'lachein hilbish nisim elu of making a living bilvush yateva. Asiya b'darch yateva b'choil asher ta'aseh. Aval asiya zu hirak levush chitzoyni legamri la'ashpad l'mayla shemekoyrim shemavai shalamayla ma'ateva. Now here the Rebbe gives a cute mashal. In the brackets, he gives a very cute mashal about this. Where does it have to be my emphasis? V'amachshiv as ha'esek shaloi mebli lahargish k'deboy sa'inyan debirchs Hashem itasher l'ma davar doimem la'odam ha'oisek b'meretz u'b'gias nefesh b'tfiras kisim la'nech b'em kesef. He's making sure that every single article of clothing has as many pockets as it can have. And he spends hours on it, sewing a lot of pockets. Instead of what should he be doing with that time? He should be making a living. He's not doing any business to be able to bring the money in. The same thing, if a person does not think about the fact that the parnas is coming from the Eibishter, it's a step deeper.
We have to make keli.
We have to make the keli, but focused on that it's the Eibishter's bracha. Now, let's take it back to the case of Achashverosh. Makol ze yuvim gam b'matzavim shel Yisrael b'mei Achashverosh. B'nei Yisrael nimtzoyim b'golos tachas shlitas ha'umis tzrichim losses covered l'malchus. They need to do it. Dina l'malchus adina. It says v'dirsh shloimei yir v'ispalu ba'ado goymer. We have to daven for the country that we're in. V'lachein kasher Achashverosh zimnas Yehuda l'suda hayu muchrach as Yehudim l'suda hayu muchrachim leishtatif kipashet. Kirtzoin ish ze Mordechai ba'if na mutter machalim ksherim. As long as they're serving, they have the prepackaged airline foods by the Achashverosh meal. I'll be double wrapped, yeah. I'll be yachtim zem. Haisa tzricha liyis hayedia v'hargosha v'hakara habrura. Shekiyume shalom Yisrael einoi tolui klal b'Achashverosh chas v'shalom. He was a superpower, like the Rebbe used to say by the Fabrengens. The Rebbe used to say the English words, a superpower. Or he used to say, but Mitzrayim was Moshel B'Kippah, he used to say that. Literally it means, Kippah means a dome, also the circle of the globe. Ki'im ach v'rak b'dei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ve'oidzais, shekiyumam shebnei Yisrael hu begeder nes ha'melubish b'teva. It's totally unnatural that the Yidden are existing. Sometimes it's an open miracle. The God l'roya sheshemers bnei Yisrael b'anhaga nisa shalamayl mateva. V'zeu ha'toichen ha'pnimi b'ma she'amru shechetem shel bnei Yisrael hayu b'zeh shenehnu mesudasei shel oisei rasham. Hishtatfusam besuda zu loy hoysam nekvayda malchus yoytz b'zeh. They didn't do it because they felt obligated. Listen, we got to, if we're invited to the king's meal, we can't insult him by not going. But rather, why did they go? Elamnei shechshibus Achashverosh ad kedei kach shetou lachshev shekiyumam tolui bechazeh shel melech Achashverosh Rasha. The emphasis on the word Rasha, not so much Achashverosh. What's a Rasha? Hainu adam shu afachai shel kim retzayin b'orei olam. How can my existence, which is supernatural and dependent on the Eibishter, how can I give it over to someone who's a Rasha, who's standing for the opposite of what the Eibishter is about? So therefore, they enjoyed the fact that they were invited because they did it because they thought Achashverosh is, as the English expression goes, the cat's meow. Vav. So now the Rebbe is not going to leave it on a negative note. He's going to explain So how did we undo that? How did we counter that and cause the Gzeira to fall off? First of all, how did the Gzeira fall off? And then how did we counter that? Yevur heitev gam efane am yuchad shal nes hatzolo and may Purim. Sheboy nishtana menes hatzolo mechanike v'alachas kam v'kam b'gulos Mitzrayim. Like he's going to explain, as Chanukah and Mitzrayim were an open miracle. Shatzolo the mechanike oisai de nisim gluyim shalom mailam anateva. Masar te giboydim b'yad chaloshim chul. Masha enken hatzolo de may Purim boy de nes hamalubish b'teva. Shari lo yoid over near line shalom mailam ateva. Everything. Just taking all the events that happened, Vashti being killed, Esther becoming, the parties, Haman, this, that, everything was natural stuff. Nothing miraculous happened. Haman's head didn't fly off. Vashti didn't all of a sudden get killed because fire came down from heaven. Whatever. All these things were natural events. Yesh loima shezeu behesem l'sibas hagzeira b'yom mahem shebnei Yisrael hayridu atzmam tachas ha'anhoga shel darkei hateva ad l'anhoga shel Achashverosh b'yoyser rasha v'ad shenenu m'sudaser shel yoyser rasha. That Hashem wanted to teach us a certain lesson with the way He saved us. He wanted to teach us where it went wrong, that we somehow think that nature is in charge, when really even nature is run in a miraculous way. Nes hamalubish b'teva melamdein shehanhoga anisis delamayla eina mugbelas melamayla min hateva. Chassidus in other places explains at length how Hashem's real power is expressed in a miracle that's enclothed in nature, rather than a miracle that's above nature. I like to give an example. Let's say a person's losing at chess, but they own the chess game. So they can say, listen, the board is mine, the pieces are mine, I can go ahead and move the pieces whichever way I want. Or I can go ahead and pick up the chess game and go home. That's not a chiddush. The chiddush is that even though it seems to be that you're losing, you're going to come out from behind, play chess by the rules, and end up winning. That's higher than Teva. What did David do? He made rules of play. He made the rules of nature. And then he decides, boom, we'll destroy the rules of nature. Water flows, the water's going to stop, and we're going to have the Eden cross right through. Then we're going to have the waters come down on the Mitzrayim. That's not playing fair. That's not playing within the Gedorim of nature. Purim is even a higher thing. In nature, where everything seems to be normal, David manages to move the pieces, and with all types of strategies, boom, the Eden are saved with the Nes in Teva. It's not limited and beyond nature, the Eibishter, that he has to destroy the setup of nature. So therefore, it's also a miracle. How do you know it's a miracle? Maybe a nes that's enclothed in nature is not called a miracle. So he says, Hein b'Chanukah, nes she'einem lubish b'teva, v'hein b'Purim, nes lubish b'teva. So you see from that even a miracle that's enclosed in nature is also called a nes. V'hainu d'mashihis l'akadosh baruch hu b'nei Yisrael b'mei Purim lo hoya ba'ofen shal haga tivis elaban haga nisis, like we make the baracha. Shalachei nira b'chush shekol asibas hoya l'mayla ma'ateva. True, every single move was natural, was teva. But when you look in the big picture, then you see, you put it together, you see there was something, a supernatural hand that was moving all the pieces over here. By the way, the period of time from the beginning of the Megillah to the end of the Megillah was a very long period of time. For a person living in that time, they would not necessarily have put together all the pieces and realized there's the party, and then there's the Vashti, and then there's the Esther, and then there's the Haman. It's like so spread out that in the time that you are, it's like over many years, it's like, how many years? I don't remember right now, but it was, I don't remember. What was it? At least a year after the party was when Esther became Malka. I don't remember. I remember seeing somewhere the cheshbon how long. Remind me. Text me, I'll find it out again. Anyway, Va'afal pikein, hanes is labish beluvish hateva. Ki gam beteva d'bnei Yisrael melubish b'nes shalamaylam hateva. That was what the Eibush was trying to teach us. Don't mistake what teva is. Know that teva is really miraculous, and therefore you won't give Achashverosh extra honor and belief that he's going to protect you, and therefore you're not going to look at your parnasa as something that's bringing you the money, because we realize that really we are beyond teva and we're getting it direct from the Eibush. Now we're going to see that this was actually used in being mevatel the gzeira in actuality. Esther did this nes hamalubish b'teva also in the way that she acted. Shnei k'tzavos elu shemavakshim v'dorshim mikol echad ve'echad miYisrael is supposed to live this way. Mechad gisa ein soimchin al nes. V'olav lasis b'derech hateva davke to do whatever he needs to do. Like I said, go to work. U'b'yachdim zem olav lahakir shekol hateva shebechayev v'rak levush v'chol inyan of boim manhagen nisdol mailam bo l'dei bitui b'ishtadlusa shel Esther v'bitl ha'gzeira. Michad gisa holcha l'Achashverosh b'shlichusa shel Mordechai lischanen loy lavakish melafanav alama. She didn't sit and say Tehillim all day. She didn't just fast with kol na'aroisai otzim kain and then hope for the gzeira to be nizmatel. No, she went and used natural means. Talk to Achashverosh. Shebishvil kach, one of the natural means she had to use, tzricha limtzei chen be'einav. Ubefrat alaf asher loy nikra l'melch ze shloshim yoyim. So therefore, it's even more important that she needs to be moitzei chen be'einav. So he invites her in, and he doesn't chas v'sholom do something to her that would, etc. Beis. Boyal chatra melech apnimis hoyst to koloi kedas was a constant fun of fortress mamish. Achas dosel lahamis if they come in without being requested. So it was very important, both for the success of being mevatel decree and also for her own life to be moitzei. V'im kein bevadai shoyz is a kukel and siyas chen miyachedes. V'yachdim zet sama shloishes yamim laila v'yoyim. Tainis v'inui shal piteva goyrem laheder nesiyas chen. So the Rebbe asks, something doesn't make sense over here. Either one or the other. You want to do just spiritual things? Fine, do spiritual things. You want to do physical things? So do the physical things the way you're supposed to do it. Not only that, the Rebbe brings in the footnote that it's brought down Shulchan Aruch that Yidden that went to war, even though in general when there was a war used to fast, but the actual soldiers did not fast. Even when it was a tinus, a regular tinus. You're not allowed to fast. You got to be strong enough to fight the war. Fasting 3 days and nights, for sure she's going to look horrible when she goes to the king. So you can say, oh, she was being spiritual. She felt this was going to be miraculous. If it's miraculous, Esther ולכן גם ההשתדלוס היא רק בזה שמספלם לקדוש ברוך הוא, מתוך טיינס, שמדרכת שובו, היא, איך נכנסו לסקונס לפרשת ממש ללכת על מלך? Stay home! Open up a Tehillim, fast, and stay home, don't go to Achashverosh. ועל פי הנ"ל מובן, כי דווקא הנהגה כזו היא המבטלת ומסכנת החטא שאיננו מסודס חולום. יסוד התוס, שגורם להנוע מסודס שלו ישראשה, היסו בכך שחשבו די יידן thought, דכאשר נמצאים במצב שצריכים להשתדל בדרך הטבע, אזי הממשלה לחוקי הטבע ותלויים בהם. They thought, who's in control? The laws of nature. And we're dependent on those laws. ובהנהגתו של אסתר, הרסה להם בעוליל, שהליכוסה לאחשוורוש היא באופן של רק לבוש להצלה הבם ולמיילו. This is what Esther was demonstrating. באופן של נס למעלה מן הטבע. ולכן לכל לראש זקוקים לתפילה וטיינס כדי לישרויים לנס זה. Remember we spoke about before, that the first thing is, before you even think about the keli, you have to think, what am I doing to be worthy of the bracha we spoke about before? The same thing. Esther was saying, what can I do to be worthy that we should save Klal Yisrael? So that's why she did these type of things. V'lchein ulam me'achar sherotza HaKadosh Baruch Hu she'hatzola nitzis t'lamayla tia lo achiza b'darkei hateva l'chein tziva le Mordechai b'dvar Hashem l'lechas l'Achashverosh v'afskam b'dover. The Rebbe adds over here b'dvar Hashem. Ordinarily, you're not supposed to endanger yourself, like we said before. Those that go out to war do not fast. The only reason why she was going to do this, even though it was endangering herself, was because Mordechai told her b'dvar Hashem. Why? Because we needed to have some type of achiza b'darkei hateva, some natural thing that had to be. B'meila muvan she'ein makom lischashav kol kach ba'al levush. Im einoi behesem legamrim kol dor she'b'darkei hateva. I don't have to be so concerned. Is this levush that good? Is it not that good? How am I going to be moitzachein if I fasted? Ki ha'ikar eina ha'levush she'boi ba'atzola ki im sibas ha'atzola. That's the main thing, is what causes the hatzola. Then the Rebbe brings down a practical thing.
Because of the Suda, to counter the Suda.
To counter the Suda. So she showed just the opposite. She showed that it's not about nature. It's not about that the rules of nature matter over here. I'm going to do it against the rules of nature. Use nature, but without following the rules.
The fast is countering.
Oh, you're saying that the fast is countering the Suda.
No, I'm not saying that. Also.
No, he's saying in a broader sense. They went to the Suda because they felt that nature mattered. Achashverosh mattered, the nations mattered, everybody was so proud of the Jews, invited them to the party, considered them equal rights, equal citizens like the rest. Comes Esther and shows that we are not beholden to nature. That's not how we save the Yidden, through nature. And therefore, in such a way, one cannot ignore the body. ומכיוון שהקדוש ברוך הוא ברם באופן זה, בוודאי זהו רצונו יתברך, שיסעסקו בצורכי הגוף. The Rebbe adds a very interesting point. It's not just nebuch. We were put in a physical body, so we have no choice. We have to use our body, and we have to take care of our body. The Rebbe says even further. The Eibishter didn't do any mistakes. The Eibishter put a Yid in a physical body because he knew what he was doing. Because he wanted a Yid to be involved in the physical, in the bodily needs. Like we just now said, the Eibishter put us in a body because he wants us to be involved with the body, so we must be involved with the body. Still in all, what does it have to be reserved for? Not for the Suda of Achashverosh. In things having to do with his neshama, limrat Torah v'kiyam mitzvos v'cholum, v'ilu isaskus b'inyonav hagashmim, hirak kidei sheyibarei v'sholem v'yuchol la'avodas Hashem. U'bezois yibochen ha'adam im oisek b'tzarchit gufel Hashem shemayim elav. How do you know? And the person, even for themselves, how do I know if I'm really serving the Eibishter or I'm serving my body? And even what he does do for his body, that's the reason why he's involved in his bodily needs. Kol chayusay v'anoosay b'limud Torah v'kiyam mitzvos v'isaskusay b'inyani aguf u'matayich hechrech al koponim b'li hana. The Rebbe brings a story in the footnote from Rebbe. It says Rabbeinu HaKadosh, before he passed away, he raised up his 10 fingers and he says that the Eibishter is a witness that I did not have pleasure from this word, loinanesi. The word was loinanesi, moilam haza, not even from as much as a finger. And the famous question is, we know that Rebbe's table was even more rich than his friend Antoninus. That even in seasonal foods, that in those days there wasn't refrigeration, So usually the foods that are to be found in a certain season can only be found then. But he was so rich, I guess he could import whatever and have foods that were out of season. The Gemara brings an example. That's how rich he was, and that's what was actually on his table. So you might think, if he had such delicious foods on his table, so he had hana. So he says, no. It was there for whatever reason. It's brought down either because he had guests that he wanted to invite, or because he used it to strengthen his body for the service of the Eibishter. But loy nehanesi, it doesn't say loy achalti, loy nehanesi. It wasn't out of hana, it wasn't out of pleasure. Avol kishoyse chaye gufay iker, harek shabal in yon nishmasi yoimer, ma chayvasi ve'esena. The Gemara in Saita says that someone that says this expression, what is my obligation and I will do it, it's a negative thing. And the Mefarshim and the Gemara itself says, what's wrong with it? The way the Rebbe explains it over here is that he's just doing things out of obligation. Tell me what I have to do, and I'll do it. Show me where it says in Shulchan Aruch I need to do this. Tell me where it says in Shulchan Aruch I'm not allowed to do this. That's not someone that's focused on his neshama. That's someone that's focused on getting any way possible to be involved in Olam Hazeh. And if I could find a loophole or whatever, so I find that loophole as well. This very same person, that when it comes to his obligations of Torah and Mitzvos, he says, whatever you tell me, if you find me a makir, if you say it's obligated, I will do it. But when it comes to the needs of his body, he doesn't say, do I need this? Do I really need that extra thing? Do I need that extra piece of cake? Or that first piece of cake? Or do I need that extra whatever thing? Do I need a fifth car or a sixth car? Do I need this or not? That he doesn't care about. That he doesn't ask, is it imza chayvasi? Mushka b'hem va'oisik b'zam etech tainug. Nehenin minyoni nafshe abamis. V'zeu alimah shomei Purim. Shekol ha'atzola shel yom mahei moisak shura b'zeh. Sha'yehudim hikiru. Sha'anam misudasi shel Achashverosh. He neged etzem kiyumoi. Tivoy ha'amiti shel Am Yisrael. Va'ideze zachu la'atzola v'geula. Mismach gula l'gula, gulas Purim l'gulas Pesach. That's why we keep other Purim in the second order, because it's close to the gula of Pesach. Va'ad v'kol yitzia amitis v'meitzoreh v'agbolas haguf, to really leave the limitations of the body. K'meitzeis k'meit t'srayim b'ren niflois b'gula amitis v'ashleim ha'idem v'shech zitkenu b'mheru v'menu mamash.
Number 175.